welcome to the Spark of Ages podcast, where we're going to talk to game changers of all kinds about their big world-shaping ideas and what sparked them. I'm your host, Rajiv Parikh, and I'm the CEO and founder of Position Squared, a digital marketing company based in Palo Alto. So yes, I'm a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, but I'm also a business news junkie and a history nerd. I'm fascinated by how big world-changing movements go from the spark of an idea to an innovation that reshapes our lives. In every episode, we're going to do a deep dive with our guest about what led them to their own eureka moments and how they're going about executing it, and perhaps most importantly, how do they get other people to believe in them so that their idea can also become a spark for the ages. This is the Spark of Ages podcast. In addition to myself, we have our producer, Sandeep, who will occasionally chime in to make sure we don't get too in the weeds with our tech jargon.
Yes, and I have the task cut out for me today because I know nothing about data security and management.
Yeah, wait till we talk today about cold secondary storage.
Yes, but
just by security and AI, it's going to be freaking cool.
But somehow, it's still sexy.
It's still sexy. Storage becomes sexy. I think we're going to be in good hands because according to CRN.com, data management specialist Cohesity has landed one of the hottest executives in the IT industry, hiring former VMware superstar Sanjay Poonen as its president and CEO. Sanjay is going to help us understand why it's a really interesting category and why it's so important to how we live our daily lives. So let me talk about my buddy Sanjay. I've known him for so many years. He's an amazing person, and I'm just totally blessed to have him here with us. He's the chief executive officer and president of Cohesity. And the mission of Cohesity is to radically simplify how organizations manage their data and unlock limitless value. Sanjay is a proven business executive with over 25 years of experience in scaling multi-billion, million-dollar businesses and building extremely strong teams. Most recently, Sanjay was the COO of VMware, another very fast-growing company, hot company in the world, where he saw sales, marketing, and services and alliances, and he enabled VMware to double his revenue from $6 billion to $12 billion in revenue during his time. Sanjay began his career as a software engineer at Microsoft and Apple, and has an MBA from Harvard Business School, where he graduated with a Baker Scholar. I can't believe it, a Baker Scholar that actually became a business leader, which designates his position in the top 5% of his graduating class. He has a master's degree in management science and engineering from Stanford University and a bachelor's degree in computer science, math, and engineering from Dartmouth College, where he graduated summa cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa. Sanjay, welcome to the Spark of Ages.
Thank you, Rajiv and Sandeep. Really delighted to be on your show, and we know each other for many years, including from the educational context. That's very gracious. You didn't need to read all of that out, but I'm honored.
Let me just say, it's pretty embarrassing to have Stanford up there. I mean, it's not an Ivy like the other ones. That's pretty, I don't know. That's a pretty dark mark on your record there.
And I do wonder about that management and science degree. I mean, I kind of wonder if that's a real thing.
We can go anywhere you want to in this country.
So Sanjay, really glad to have you here. You and I, like you say, have known each other since our time at HBS, and I've been tracking your career and your career rise. You were originally a software engineer, and over time you built your own companies, and then you got into executive management, and now you're leading this amazing company that is currently private and may one day go public. And so I'm really excited about having this conversation because there's so much to learn. So let's start off with Cohesity's big news. A few months ago, you announced the merger with Veritas. And how does this change your business, and how do you see it reshaping your industry?
Yeah, thanks, Rajiv. We, I got here about 21 months ago in August 2022. This sector, which is, protecting data from attacks, but then also providing insights in that. Our mission has been to, manage, protect, and secure the world's data and provide insights into that. That's kind of what we've done for 10 years. But it's a very fragmented industry. We're number 8 in that industry, growing the fastest of anybody, and probably the one that everyone thinks has the best technology, as sort of evidenced by the customer base. We have 4,500 customers, and the who's who, 45% of the Fortune 100, some very big names. But we're still number 8 in the market, even though we're growing the fastest. The number 1 in the market is 11%. So in a fragmented market like that, we asked ourselves, how can we, if our goal is to get to number 1, how do we go faster to that future? And, Veritas, I'd worked at Veritas actually 20 years ago, so I know the company very well. I've not been in this space, but I'd followed it a little bit from the outside the last 8 years I was at VMware. So I'd lost a little bit of touch of what had happened in the space. But as I looked at the space, I remembered Veritas, and they were sitting inside Carlyle, who owned them. And we had a discussion, starting about October, November 2022. And then it took us several months, almost 12, 15 months to put this announcement together. I think it's one of the most seminal announcements in our space, the biggest transaction, certainly in the data protection industry. It's a $7 billion deal where number 8 is technically acquiring the data protection assets out of Veritas and spinning out some of the remainder of it into a company called Dataco. So we announced that on February 8th. It's a very creative structure. It's a combination of debt and equity, but it'll put together number 8 plus number 3 will put us in number 1. We are, obviously working through the regulatory process to get all the approvals. We expect it to close in the early fall, and it puts us in a much better place. So our choices were to go public this year on our own.
That's right.
Really good, set of numbers that could have gotten us there. We are imminently free cash flow positive, growing fairly fast. But we thought, we'd go out. One of our, I call them honorable competitors, Rubrik, went out in the last few weeks. Commvault was another competitor who had been around public for another, I think, 15, 20 years already.
Yeah, they've been around forever.
For quite a while. So there are comparables in the space, and we want all of the space to do well. So we wish all of them well. But we felt we'd be in a much better position to go public at, more than twice either of their sizes. The big difference is we would be a lot more profitable. So you'd be taking the fast growth of Cohesity, combining with Veritas is immensely profitable. And you get a company that's easily rule of 40, 27% free cash flow margin, growing about mid-teens. That's a very profitable company. The revenue of the pro forma revenue will be 1.6. So going into next year, we'd easily be a $1.8 billion company. If we forward 12 months from there, let's call ourselves a $2 billion company. A $2 billion revenue company at sort of 27% free cash flow margins, growing, let's say mid-teens, is a very attractive company to go public. And while we had to load up a financial structure to make that happen, the feedback from customers has been immensely positive and about the roadmap, the innovation and speed that Cohesity is going to bring to the scale and the customer base that Veritas has. So I'm very excited about it. The advisors, the bankers, the lawyers who helped us on this, it's very creative deal making. I'm not a deal making junkie, but if you are, this is one of the most creative deals done in the last, I'd say 10, 15
Well, you're buying, the interesting part is, right, you're buying a company much bigger in revenue than you are. Although I think you guys were, as Cohesity, were growing much faster and you're a younger company, and you're also taking over. You're the fast emerging player taking over.
This to me is my like, I'm the dumb LA brother question, which is, how do you go about acquire or even thinking that, hey, I can acquire a much larger company than mine? To me, it's like, if Tom's is like, I want to buy Nike. So I'm just curious, like, how do you have this sort of audacity, the bravery as the CEO to be like, yeah, we're going to do this?
Sandeep, that's actually a really good question. And in fact, I told my wife, I'm an immigrant. I came to this country, and only in the United States could a sort of smaller, poorer company, we don't have a lot of cash on our balance sheet. We have some, but it's usually a kind of fund cash flow for operations. We're imminently cash flow positive this quarter. So we don't have a lot of cash to do this deal. How can we buy a company twice our size? We're about, circa 540 million run rate there, about 1.1 together, 1.6. So 1/3 is us, 2/3 are them. Listen, debt and equity can buy anything, theoretically speaking, but you have to make sure that the new entity can service the amount of debt that you are bringing. So you can only do this if the asset that you're buying is extremely profitable, unless you're profitable already. If you're profitable and doing well, you probably would have gone public, but we're not public. And I think it also works well with two private companies. When you're public, you have to deal with shareholders and shareholder approvals and like stock prices that go up and down. And, then a rumor happens, the stock price pops up.
Hitting your quarterly by a penny, right?
And quite frankly, you're worried about a leak. We were worried about a leak for 15 months. But listen, the price was decided fairly on. And we weren't greedy about the price because, inside that $7 billion is the price of us and the price of them. But we felt the more important factor was not, we could have argued it's not worth 7, it's worth 8 or 9, but that's like paper money. I'd rather value it at some money that's not under what we should be worth, or also extravagant. I don't believe in these sort of, extravagant valuations that are for private companies. I'd more importantly want to go public at 14, 15, 18. I mean, just kind of create a $20, $25 billion market cap and go public, which next year. So I think the situation for Veritas sitting inside Carlyle, their only option was to go public or get sold. And I think it was a tougher path for them to go public because they weren't growing as fast. I mean, that's probably what created a necessity on their side.
Kind of why they were bought by Carlyle in the first place.
In the first place, and the hope was when you buy a company private, you can sell it to somebody else or you take it public. And I don't know if they had just shopped it to other people. I think we had looked at them at VMware. But I think, listen, then the rest of a dynamics of a deal is friendships, right? It's all, the art of a deal is two sides who like each other, who believe the common vision. And that's really, you got to take weeks and months. And, both Patrick McCarter, who is the partner from Carlyle, Greg Hughes, the CEO of Veritas. Greg and I have been friends for 20 years. And we're egoless about it. I don't care if I'm the CEO, he's the CEO. We believe that the combination of Cohesity and Veritas could help customers, could help our employees, and the joint company would be a better IPO than either of us on our own. That's like, when you see that and you're egoless about it, hey, a deal could happen.
But why isn't it like Veritas buying you guys as the smaller company?
It'd be too hard for them because they'd have to take a lot more cash to buy us out, right? I mean, a private equity company, they've already made that. They've already taken debt to do their deal. They'd have to take more debt to buy us out. Because the only way you do that is you'd have to buy us. They've already got a deal that's got debt.
Because Cohesity is growing so fast and has in its market a strong position, and Veritas does as well, they command a higher valuation relative to Veritas's revenue, right? So they'll have a much higher valuation. So for them to do it the other way around, they'd have to, as Sanjay said, load themselves with so much debt that it would be very difficult to pull off. So Sanjay could, or his advisory team could construct a really interesting debt and equity transaction that puts it together, that packages it so that when they go public, they're getting some of the best of both, right? So if you think about some of this, because of the higher revenue and the higher eventual, and the fact that it's profitable, there'll be more investors that will be interested in buying that public entity than maybe just necessarily the super fast turbocharged Cohesity company.
Yeah.
Cohesity entity.
Well said. Private equity firms take debt, they finance a deal through debt and equity, and they make that happen. That's been 6 years ago. And for a variety of reasons, you have to then ask yourself, when that debt matures, what do you do with the company? Do you refinance and so on and so forth? And the debt on Veritas was done on very attractive terms. But I think these are all aspects of timing of a deal. The timing of the deal was good. The friendship between the two firms were great. Our common customer base was helpful. And we had a common vision of what we could do as a bigger company together that brought in innovation. This is, while we're talking a lot about the financial aspects here, the bigger aspect is we will have an engineering team that's twice some of our other modern competitors. These are honorable competitors, but we'll be bigger than Rubrik and Commvault's engineering team put together.
Can you talk about that innovation and what led you to coming to Cohesity in the first place, right? Like, explain the story, because I think it's a really cool story of how what could have been just a bunch of tape storage devices managed into something much more interesting because of today's more open and secure need to be secure environment.
Yeah. I think, Rajiv, you put it, 20 years ago when I was at Veritas, it was a storage discussion. What has changed in the last 5 years is ransomware attacks. Every ransomware attack right now is going after what's called secondary data. Think of data like an iceberg. Primary data is where you store your databases, things that are hot for a day, week, month. And then as it ages, you push it to the bottom of that iceberg. It's called secondary data. Backup, archive, vaulted data is all there. The bad guys decide, hey, the secondary data is just a historic time series index of everything you've kept. Okay, let's go after the secondary data because that's all your data. It's going to probably cause more pain. And they do everything from what's called single extortion to double extortion to triple extortion, which is I'm going to corrupt that data. I'm going to exfiltrate that data. I'm going to affect the supply chain of that data. So secondary data has become the most common attack vector, backup data. And as a result, this has transformed from a storage discussion to a security discussion. And every CISO has budget to protect their data. And data is the gold. So as they think about that, this is quickly transformed. And I saw that happening All of us in our space right now are talking about terms like data security and cyber resilience. So it's not just us. Everybody is doing that, which is good for the industry. We're all collectively now approaching the CISO a lot more than just the infrastructure person having in thing. That's one. That I saw that coming in and was part of the reason, when a boardroom topic, yes, I'm on a couple of boards, are very much about cybersecurity and ransomware, this topic is relevant. But the other thing I didn't see as clearly, I had some inklings of it in August 22, was I felt the data, if all the world's data, remember our mission is to protect, secure, and manage the world's data and provide insights into it. That provide insights part, if all of the world's data sits on our platform, hundreds of exabytes in due course, that should be a treasure trove of analytics, because all your historical data sit there at a bank or a hospital or the government or whatever have you. You should be able to search and analyze it just like, so we become in some senses the snowflakes or data bricks of secondary data. I felt that was an important opportunity, and I called it at the time I joined analytics. I didn't call it AI. I called it analytics. What happened last year was something that was remarkable. When ChatGPT came out, I was playing with ChatGPT to ask it to summarize speeches I'd given 15, 20 years ago at SAP on analytics. It was pretty remarkable. And then I would ask it to summarize, other people I respected, how they spoke. It was very amazing. I found it to be the world's best summarization tool of some large amount of data. So I was like, who's going to win in this? Clearly, the companies will build great OpenAI. Now, of course, you've seen, Omni and all the kinds of new stuff with
really amazing stuff. Yeah.
It's amazing. But the companies are going to win are the companies who have the data. Google, Microsoft have a lot of data in their systems. The snowflakes, the Databricks, as they use these tools. Well, if the world's data is on our platform, do you think it's possible for us to build a co-pilot ChatGPT that can search and summarize Cohesity-based backup data? So I went into Microsoft. I know Satya Nadella very well, and asked him, do you think that GPT-4 and at that time it was GPT-3, OpenAI? He said, yeah, there's this technique in computer science called retrieval augmented generation, RAG, which I knew nothing about. Okay, I thought RAG was a piece of cloth you wipe your windshield with. That's all I knew about RAG. So we came back and we studied everything we could download about RAG from the computer science papers. We looked at computer science research on how to do it for unstructured data, and we found it to be remarkably powerful to the way in which we could build that for our system without requiring rehydration of data. So we implemented that, and then along came NVIDIA towards the end of last year and said, listen, we're amazed at what you're doing. We'd like you to take an investment from us, and we'd like you to build the product. It's called GAIA, a generative AI app. GAIA is also kind of a Greek goddess of mother of it. So we did that March this year. Jensen, in his speech at GTC, which is just like if you look straight across there as the SAP Center, talked about Cohesity as the only company in this space and why they were making investments. His words were, Cohesity is sitting on a gold mine of data, hundreds of exabytes. We're excited that NVIDIA is going to be working with Cohesity to build GAIA on top of the NVIDIA GPU set. And
in a way, when I think about RAG, and RAG is a term used in the industry, it's, retrieve, like as you're talking about retrieve, you guys were really early in it. Nowadays, it's become as part of what these large language models like OpenAI, ChatGPT, Anthropic, our friends at Cohere, they've basically built as the business application. So just to help, so because you guys were early and you're sitting on so much data, in a way, you're building the ability to get access to much more intelligent analyses of your information than you ever had before. And I wonder if you just give when you talk about primary and secondary data, to us geeks, we get it. But if you were to say, like, I don't know, I'm a
totally
company,
get it.
So all of your data that you use in email, think not necessarily consumer data, it could be consumer data too, but your enterprise data, if you're in a business and you're sending emails, at some point in time, that emails get archived into kind of what's called a backup or a vault or an archive, a snapshot. That's typically where it goes below that line of the iceberg. And the policy of when you make that is a function of when people say, well, it's no longer being searched, it's no longer active. It could be a month, it could be a year, but we still have to retain those emails. We can't delete them. So, you probably don't have your 10-year-old email sitting in the active system which you can do, because people are like, I'm not looking for my emails from 10 years ago. Can you bring those back? So at some point in time, every company, emails just form one form of unstructured data All of your Word files, your PDF files, if you've been in a company 10, 15, 100 years, is all there. But all of it doesn't need to be in some OneDrive location where you can get to it. At some point in time, IT will set a policy that basically backs that up. Okay. You can think of secondary data as all your backup data, very simply put.
Yep.
For both unstructured and structured data are things like databases. It's put into a database, a structure.
So you can imagine a company has like tons of transaction data and tons of unstructured data, emails, documents, whatever. It doesn't make sense to put it in your expensive disk-based servers or flash drive-based servers. You're going to put it in what they call secondary storage in a lower cost place.
You're putting it in the basement.
I need to get access. You know what? I got a question. Maybe there's a lawsuit, or maybe there's some IP I created 10 years ago and I need to support that filing, and then the AI capability on top of it is letting you ask questions of it in a way that you couldn't ask before. Is that a fair?
So my brain works in analogies. This is what I'm imagining, and you tell me if I'm right. You have a bunch of data. It's very important to keep it secure. So you hire these security guards to walk through your treasure trove of data and make sure that, hey, there's no bugs in here. There's nobody sniffing around, nobody hiding in here to steal your data. But while those guys are down there, they're not just buff security guards with awesome armor. They are also brilliant. Turns out they are sharp. They're chess players as well, and they're analyzing your data while they're keeping it safe and sort of setting up the Dewey Decimal System for you so that you can really easily access the important parts of your data while making sure there are no nasty bugs in there. Is it something like that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So,
okay.
Rajiv used the term structured and unstructured data. Think of structured data as data that sits it's like a spreadsheet. It's a database. So anything that sits in a set of cells in an Excel spreadsheet is usually, when you have lots of it, it's called a database. Unstructured data is like your emails and your Word files and all your documents. All of that data at some point in time gets stored in a bag. In the old days, it used to be tape, okay? In some places, it's still tape, but it can be stored in what's called colder storage. It doesn't need to be in the hotter storage that needs to be actively, accessed.
And the idea is that stuff is still vulnerable.
It's still So the first thing you have to acknowledge is very vulnerable, because the bad guys decided you've got a lot of security defenses around your primary data. Okay, you're doing that. You're actively looking at it because that's your Snowflake, your Oracle databases, your Word files, all that's active there. You've got lots of defenses around that, but you could be a little lapse. All that data on your secondary data, on your backup data, it's sitting there in a vault. Someone attacks it, and the sophistication of ransomware attacks was oriented around that because it's all your historical data. And at some point in time, someone does ask a historical question. What did I do 5 years ago? What did I do 10 years ago? And in many cases, you are required to keep that data. So the first thing you have to do is make sure that data is secure. This industry is called data protection. You got to protect it. And the advances in security have had to be, significantly strengthened. That's why I said, listen, this was become a security problem. However, just like keeping that data secure on its own without ability to get access to it. Now, the reason it was very hard to search and analyze that data, you have to understand that everybody in industry takes secondary data and they do what's called compress the data by doing what's called dedupe. So you remove a lot of the duplication of ones and zeros and you compress it into something highly compressed. That's really, by the way, what happens on a tape. Yep. You take this very expansive data, you compress it and put it into it. So when you want to recover it, you first have to do what's called rehydrate the data. You've got to take that data, unpack it, rehydrate it, and then you can search it. That's an expensive proposition in time, not expensive in compute resources. And as a result, it takes much longer to search it. Generative AI and ChatGPT, and this is the breakthrough. So we have a patent pending on the way in which we use RAG to be able to directly search our backup data.
That's
and
awesome.
recover. So Rajiv may ask a question, exactly like he pointed out. Hey, 10 years ago, I wrote a bunch of risk documents, or we had a bunch of loans that we offered 10 years ago. This is a financial services, a bank. Can you summarize for me what we did? Or maybe you have hundreds of contracts from the past and you want to know the terms you offered particular vendors and so on from those contracts. It's all in documents. ChatGPT and retrieval augmented generation combined with LLMs is the best summarization tool. I've never seen anything as powerful in AI at summarizing a vast amount of data. So There's a lot of technology behind this, like vector databases and so on. But we built that capability really fast, last 6-12 months, patented, applied for a patent on it because we expected our competitors would try to copy us, kept it under stealth. And then at the GTC event with Jensen, both announced the investment of NVIDIA in our company. So all of this is happening, by the way. March is a month after we announced Veritas. We've had kind of a rolling thunder. In February, we announced Veritas. March, we announced this investment and the big GAIA launch with NVIDIA. Around April, and IBM says they're investing in us. And then hopefully by August, September, October, we'll close this deal. So I think it's an exciting time, and we're just trying to basically make these two vectors, security and AI, the two vectors that drive our innovation. It's very exciting. Nobody else in our industry are taking advantage of those innovations as much as we are.
I love that. I love the way you explain it and the example and the technology behind it, because you're right. I mean, you would think of storage as not as unsexy, and then you add the security element and it becomes much more interesting because people are finding a way to get into it. And that was some of the genius of your co-founder, Mohit, who is a really incredible entrepreneur, right? Who saw this opening, right? Coming out of his background. And then you add AI to it, and then you even add way more value for what people would consider, you're talking about cold storage. This is really exciting.
It's really transformed this. I give a lot of credit to Mohit. He invented Hyperconverged, doesn't get enough credit I think he deserves for inventing Hyperconverged and Nutanix, and then taking that same invention to secondary storage and our segment. And then, of course, everybody in the industry has emulated that architecture. A year after us, Rubrik was formed, they copied this architecture. Yeah. There was a company called Hedwig that Commvault acquired, copied this again. Even Veritas built an appliance that was copied of Mohit. So Mohit invented the way in which you do this in 2013 that spawned every company since then and their innovations, whether it was Rubrik, whether it was Commvault, whether it was even Veritas. And ultimately, you can't invent, even what we're doing in generative AI, we may have a patent, but everyone will eventually emulate it. You want to be the first in industry to do something. That's what innovators really thrive on. And as long as you can, you want to be the first and only. Right now, we're the first and only doing this generative AI stuff. At some point in time, we'll be first and everyone will copy us. That's okay.
After they hear this podcast, probably.
It's hard to, you need a very sharp engineering team there's a lot of innovation in how we built RAG for backup that requires you to have a file system that we've built. So
there's a lot behind it. And then here's the other one. And so when I think about all this innovation that you've built up, there's also a point of view that you have as a CEO, and you've been in this industry a long time, in the technology industry and the various players in the industry. And so I think about, you mentioned, hey, my investors include IBM, NVIDIA, HP, Cisco, Amazon, right? You have all these players who are in it. And then there are security players that you're working with, tons of potentially competitors. There are firms that you're cooperating with. How do you think about the industry like that? Because a lot of times in the industry, especially in the tech industry, it'd be like Java versus Sun Java versus Microsoft, or this competitor versus that competitor, and they try to knock each other out. But you've taken a more a more expansive point of view, and maybe you could describe that.
It's a great question, Rajiv. It's for me, I don't have any, there was competitive rivalry between us and Rubrik when the company started. What I'm told is that when Cohesity started, some of the folks at Rubrik were on the board of Nutanix, kind of got there. But, so there's a little bit of rivalry that started from the birth of this company. But I don't have anything personal in this industry. I want everybody to be successful. We certainly have to show to the market and to customers why we're the best tech. But it's a little bit like the car industry. Let's just say we're a Tesla, okay? Are you going to go and tell a person who has a Ford or a GM or a Toyota that they have a bad car? No, it's a great car. You want to show them why your car is better, okay? So I always, first off, I've put into the company's DNA, we will call our competitors honorable competitors. They are good cars. It works for companies, and we're going to be respectful, compete with dignity, but then differentiate. You have to differentiate, right? We differentiate, and we often talk about, Rajiv, you're a marketing expert, so you'll appreciate this. We talk about 5 S's that make us unique, and none of the S's have to do with Sanjay. Okay, I'll give you number 1 is speed. Number 2 is scale. Number 3 is security. Number 4 is simplicity. And number 5 is smarts. And each of those have a simple way by which our sales teams, our marketing teams can articulate that. And I start with that perspective because while it's a competitive industry, and yes, we're going from number 8 to number 1, we have very clear confidence as to why we're different. But we also believe that our competitors are worthy competitors, are doing good stuff.
Yeah, you hear that, Elon? None of those S's were sexy. So Elon, back off with
simplicity might be the closest to
simplicity. Yes.
I think that then you basically look at the ecosystem, which is I think the heart of your question. Ask yourself, how should you sort through the ecosystem? So I start with probably the most important ecosystem in any company right now is the cloud ecosystem, because they're the biggest. Amazon's $100 billion, AWS is a $100 billion revenue company. AWS is an investor in us. Right. 4 years ago, they looked at the space and decided Cohesity was the winner, and we've done a lot with them. Google's also an investor in us. Microsoft's partnering more with us. So the public cloud players, AWS, Azure, Google, if you count the private cloud being VMware, Nutanix, Red Hat, that cloud ecosystem is super important to us, whether it's private cloud, VMware, Red Hat, Nutanix, or public cloud, AWS, Azure, Google, and if you want to include a fourth, Oracle. We haven't as yet figured out our China strategies, whether we go with Alibaba, but those are the cloud players, okay? Secondly, you look at sort of I would say the hardware players and ask yourself, because many of these places we are sitting inside server, not all the way down to the chip level, except for NVIDIA. So HPE, Dell, Cisco, Lenovo, HP and Cisco have invested in us. Dell's also a partner of ours. We work with all of them. So we have to work with those hardware players. And in some cases also white box, Supermicro capability sets. And similarly, the storage players, NetApp, Pure, Vast, a variety of storage players, EMC, very important to our ecosystem because we have to integrate with them. And then similarly, you can go down to even the chip level, NVIDIA in the case of GPUs and Intel in the case of CPUs and AMD, because there are things we can do with confidential compute and security there. So that's how I would describe everything in the hardware. And then the final group of ecosystem players among the tech players is the software security players, Palo Alto, CrowdStrike, Zscaler. So we've ranked the top 5-10 security players. So those are the ecosystem of cloud, hardware, software, and we have a very large envelope. We have one of the best ecosystems of any player in the industry. And that takes personal work on my part to call those CEOs, build them. For example, IBM decided they're a competitor of ours. 15 months ago, I began talking to Arvind and the team. They decided to stop investing as much in Tivoli, their product, Spectrum Protect, their product in this area.
Right.
And OEM Cohesity as their, so number 4 in the space, IBM is now partnering with us. It's a huge game changer.
That's right.
And our partnership is just growing month to month to month, quarter to quarter. They're now investing in us.
So they started as competitors and then they moved into this
They've
partnership?
been in the space for 50 years. They had a product called Tivoli that they acquired in the 1990s that became a storage manager. It used to be called Tivoli Storage Manager, TSM. When I was at Veritas in 2004, 20 years ago, our arch competitor was IBM. Okay. Now they've fallen off and not invested in much. And these newer companies like Cohesity have been taking share from them. And I called Arvind and said, listen, why do you want to fight us? You're not really present that word. You're donating share to us. Why don't we partner? And his team looked at us and said, we respect you as having the best tech. The biggest customers were picking Cohesity, so they knew we were the best tech. And I said, listen, what do we not have? Distribution. We're not in Latin America and Europe and APJ. We have a good presence in North America. You are there. So we need distribution. What do you need? Our tech. Let's work together to find, and as long as you don't want to build that tech yourself and are willing to partner, and then not just partner, but potentially also invest in us as a company, we'll partner with you. And we will let you take the lead at those customers and sell. So they created a product called Defender Data Protect, IBM Defender Data Protect, which underneath covers just Cohesity. And they sell Defender Data Protect to their customers. And I make sure that at those accounts, if it's an IBM-centric account, our reps help them sell Defender Data Protect. Don't collide with them with our own. I mean, what's the point in selling your own car against it? They're selling your car. No, we may get a little less out of that as opposed to going direct. But every time you work with IBM, they bring you into 10 new deals. Okay. And it really helps our reps because in many cases, we don't have the distribution we need in these countries. We're a much smaller company without the brand. And IBM is such an incredible brand.
Right. They have access to all the executives and all the top IT, all the executives
all
in
the
every
tech
company.
executives, they're working them. And the IBM, right, Arvind's just had an enormous renaissance of the company. It's now approaching $200 billion. So it's the same way there. You kind of go and ask every company, it's important in the space, hey, can we partner with you? What's the way in which we angle it?
It's like Shaq and Kobe going at each other for years and eventually being like, hey, let's just be on the same team.
Well, I just said, listen, from having been 20, 30 years in the industry, I have relationships with CEO levels of every one of these tech companies. Rajiv, Andy Jassy was a classmate of ours
Yeah.
at school. So
Managing in the market space.
So I can get a call and a meeting with any of them. But when you get to that, you have to have a proposition that makes it a win-win for them. And then you work on it hard.
I think to your point about this, we had a growth marketing summit, and one of the folks that spoke, and you might know him, Avanish Sahai. He talked about the importance of building ecosystems, right? Because he that's what he's been doing all his life, and part of the ecosystem is saying, well, I win by making my partners win, and I have to have an expansive enough view so we know where we compete, where we partner, where the edges are. But in the end, you have to make both sides win, and you have to tilt it in such a way that it works. So I love that point of view. It's a really interesting point of view. And what I want to do is kind of shift over to what sparked you to think like this, and what sparked you to get into this whole world that you're in today. You went to great schools. You're able to come to the US and take your natural inclination or your natural desires forward. And and you also went into data analytics, right, as part of your journey. What kind of got you to that point? Like, what made you say, this is the kind of path I want? Did you think about it early on, or did you let it flow as you went?
I think it's more of the I mean, listen, I think at the core of it, my mom was a big influence in my life. She's a very humble person. I think everything I get about how I deal with people, it's a good story. My mom's a doctor, and she, in India, we just moved them from India to the US 4 or 5 years ago to live here as they've gotten older, but they've lived most of their life. And my dad and mom have been involved in social service a lot of their life. And my dad's helped plant a number of churches in India, but my mom was a doctor who left one of the top medical schools in India, a school called CMC in Vellore, and went to serve in a leprosy hospital near Mumbai. And leprosy is now more or less eradicated from the world, but in the 1960s, there's still a fair amount of leprosy. And she's really been doing medical work all of her life, not for money, but to help society and help people. Really hasn't done it for much of a fee. So I saw her serve. The medical profession in India, yes, you can make money off it, but there's so much disease and so much of challenges that people have with poverty, that you do it for a cause, not because you're trying to make a career. In a famous hospital, not today, but some of the most strangest diseases you will see in countries like India and Africa, developing countries. So I saw that, and she really, taught us all, like, listen, you help the poor, and you help the people who are underprivileged, you help the people who have less than you, and you don't get your kind of your identity in life by, when we die. We're not going to be able to take our title and our bank balance into the grave. It's like, what impact did you have on society? How much character did you leave back with your kids, your family, your friends? Those are things that really matter. So I think those are the soft things that really influence. But on the business side, Rajiv, I didn't know I was going to go to Harvard Business School. Wanted to really study engineering. I came to the US because they offered me a scholarship to study computer science at Dartmouth. I thought I'd never been to Hanover, New Hampshire. Could you imagine a boy from Bangalore with really warm?
I grew up in New Hampshire, and
it's so cold.
I fell in love with it when we were 7 years old. When I was 7 years old, and I was in Manchester, New Hampshire, which was a city, and Hanover is really out there.
Can you imagine, like, this guy coming from a town at the time, Bangalore was 4 or 5 million, really warm, freezing cold in New Hampshire.
Oh my God!
Yes, I did speak English because a lot of Indians speak English in India, so the language was okay. But it was a culture shock. If you've seen the movie Animal House, it's about Dartmouth. It's done by Dartmouth grads about Dartmouth, so it's a complete culture shock. But I think when I came out of Dartmouth, and I took, I did between my junior and senior year, about 6 to 8 months at Microsoft was my first exposure to a tech company that was doing really well. And then I wanted to come to Silicon Valley to work at Apple, and it was my dream job. I came to work at Apple. My only thing that I wanted in the 1990s was write good code and be an engineer. And I was the youngest engineer at Apple in my group, learning a ton. But around 95, the project we were working on at Apple was not going anywhere. And my uncle, who was also the same uncle who lived in Boston and advised me to, kind of consider coming to Dartmouth, said, hey, why don't you take some time off if you haven't figured out what you want to do and go to business school? And, listen, I don't know. I tell people some of these admissions to schools is not intuitive. I applied to a whole bunch of business schools, got rejected at every place except Harvard. I got rejected at Penn, So
it's because the rest of them heard you got into Harvard, so they're like, forget it.
It's okay. It is what it is.
Because they wanted you to hang out with me, because that's the only school I applied to. So.
So I think when I went to business school, I began to see a different side of tech, which was more the business side, and I got intrigued by it. Like some of my favorite classes were finance and competitive strategy and marketing. And I came back after business school and became product manager at Alpha Block Sysmol. And that's where I began to really get really intrigued by the business aspects of tech. But prior to that, so I there was no master plan. It was just the river was flowing, and then the river flowed a different way. It was just, and then of course, since 97, 99, year 2000, and I would say the two formative careers were my 8 years at SAP and my 8 years at VMware. That really helped me learn a lot about what it meant to run a global company, i.e. SAP. And then where we took the company from 10 to 20 billion, I was president there. And then to really help VMware scale, that was an applications industry, but then go down the infrastructure space and learn VMware COO, where we were very fortunate to grow the company from 6 to 12. Those, I would say 16 years were immense learning.
Is it fair to characterize it as you were sort of, it seems like you were sort of driven by empathy in the sense of wanting to impact the most amount of people? Like if you're growing up seeing your mom, help these people with leprosy, and if that's really what drove you, then is that what sort of carried you through, like, wanting to go to business school, wanting to do all this stuff? Is like, I'm curious, what's the why behind, making these big jumps?
We were born, I'm the oldest of 4 boys. My mom had stopped working. That was before she got married. I think by the time we were born, my mom was just doing medical work, kind of a more ad hoc to help people. I think the basis of caring for the underprivileged, the underdog, growing up in school, I wasn't very popular. I was bullied. I had thick glasses. So I learned that my home was a kind of a tower of refuge in the midst of, I have a lot of empathy for kids who are being bullied because I was bullied.
Yeah.
And it created a sense of, like, even though I was not popular at school, I did well academically, I was safe at home. And it made me really realize, hey, listen, that's kind of what I want to have when I have a home. If my kids are not popular at school, if they're bullied, they're going to know that they're completely safe and their parents love them. And I think when let's imagine you're getting bullied by someone who's like more, I don't know, bigger than you or richer than you. When you compare your lot to people who are less than you, okay, like your bullying like fades away. It's like, dude, you're so thankful. Like So I think part of the aspect of being content is not to compare yourself to people who are more than you, but to compare yourself to people who are less than you. And when you compare yourself to people less than you, you're thankful. Most discontent happens because people are greedy about what they want more. And we're born. Listen, we're born as grabbers. But I think the world's a much better place when you're a giver than a grabber.
I love that.
You give your time, your talent, your treasure.
That's right.
Time, talent, treasure, the 3 things we can all give, right? Treasure is money, talent is the gifts that you've been given, and time is, 24 hours a day. So I think that's kind of how I've sought to live my life. Now, those are, I would say, the impermeables that when you now put that into an engineering context, you're just writing code, you're trying to help people in society. But in a managerial role, ultimately as a CEO now, you have a lot bigger of a platform. You can now, when I talk about that now, we talk about a servant leadership. People want to listen. People want to hear. And I do leadership classes. That I call leadership now, that I've done from my SAP. I teach those classes myself. I probably put 2,000 or 3,000 employees between my SAP, VMware, and Cohesity years through those. The most amazing thing employees tell me is, Sanjay, you're willing to spend 8 hours of a day teaching us? I said, yeah. Why would I outsource that to someone in HR? I want you to learn. And we're learning and teaching. Yeah, it's not like I'm like the
you're building it together, and you're sharing it, and you're driving it.
Sharing experiences with me. One of the things we do in our leadership classes is amazing. Okay, we do this exercise called a leadership journey. You plot on an axis. Okay, the x-axis is time, and the y-axis are your highs and lows in life. And I tell people, just for 10 minutes, tell us the story of your life. You can go way back to when you were born, but just plot when there were high moments in your life and when they're long. Tell us a story of your life. Okay. And I start by emulating that myself. Amazing. And I tell people, if somebody's life story is just one up and to the right vector, they're being faked.
That's not real.
That's not real.
That's
But
a
you'd
real
be surprised.
challenge. Yeah.
Some people say, "Oh, my,"
Yeah, I think they want to characterize it as such, but we get stronger through these challenges.
Everyone, you think? I mean, I tell people, everyone sees my trajectory and say, "Oh, you were CEO of VMware and president. Your life must have been up and right." I said, "No. Let me tell you the values of my life."
This is one of our favorite parts of this. This is something that we do uniquely. Sandeep creates a game.
Okay. Well. So you've been on Spark of Ages, but now you're in the Spark tank. Okay. So we're going to play a game today. We're diving deep into the digital trenches with a mind-bending game of two truths and a fish.
Okay.
The cybersecurity edition here. So you're going to have to determine which one of these of the three is the fish. Okay. Two of these are actually true. So joining us here today, of course, in our battle of wits is our special guest, the CEO of a top-tier data security company, a veritable cyber sentry guarding the gates against digital doom, and not to be outdone, my brother and co-host who thinks resetting his router is the pinnacle of tech support. Yes. All right. Round number one. Sony. Oh, poor Sony. Which of these Sony hacks didn't actually happen? Number one, in 2014, a hacking group known as the Guardians of Peace infiltrated a Sony Pictures Entertainment studio, leaking entire movies, personal emails from executives, and other sensitive data. Number two, in 2017, hackers infiltrated Sony's music digital streaming platform, allegedly leaking unreleased albums from major artists like Beyonce and Kendrick.
Okay.
Number three, in 2011, hackers accessed the Sony PlayStation network, compromising the personal data of approximately 77 million accounts, exploiting an outdated web applications to gain access to the network, bypassing security measures, and leaking personal data, names, addresses, and credit cards.
One is definitely true. That happened. I can't decide if 3 and 2. I think 2 is false. 3 is accurate.
I actually had the same answer as Sanjay. I think I remember 1.
1 is definitely true.
Okay, here we go. Ding, ding, ding. You both get a point. Well done.
Hey, look at that, Rajiv.
Yeah, even the router resetter got the point. All right. Number 2, these are more outlandish hacks, okay? In 2014, a security researcher managed to hack the controls of an airplane mid-flight through the entertainment system on his seat.
Wow, that's one. Okay.
He claimed he issued the climb command, which briefly changed the plane's course before the pilot regained control.
Whoa.
Number 2, 2008, a teenager managed to hack the email account of then U.S. Vice President candidate Sarah Palin, using information available on the internet to reset her password.
Password.
And what's the third?
I think probably just guessed password 123. All right. Number 3, 2018, a notorious hacker group successfully accessed the control systems of over 50 commercial satellites, orchestrating a satellite blackout, turning them off simultaneously for a brief period, causing global disruptions in communications and weather forecasting services.
In 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to lock in my answer now.
I got
yours?
I got mine.
I think 3 was false. 1 and 2 may have been true. I don't know. I don't remember.
So I feel like it's number 3 as well, because if it had happened, we would have heard about it.
I would have heard about it. I don't remember. 2000. I mean, when you go back to 2011, I've forgotten. But 2018 is like 6 years.
And I do believe that the folks who designed the planes were dumb enough to connect the systems together.
Especially if they're on the plane.
You guys, ding, 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 are again neck and neck because you're picking the same answers. Congratulations. Number 3 is the lie. Well done. All right. It was probably a Boeing plane that was hacked anyway. All right. Round 3, early hacking pioneers. In 1988. We're going back. Robert Tappan Morris created the first known computer worm on the internet, the Morris worm. It was originally intended to measure the size of the internet, but ended up causing a significant disruption due to a programming error, leading to thousands of computers being shut down. In 1983, a group of high school students from Milwaukee, known as the 414s, gained notoriety after hacking into systems at institutions like the Los Alamos National Library, the Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and Security Pacific Bank. And their exploits highlighted the vulnerabilities in early computer networks, raising awareness about the need for digital security. In 1972, a group called the Cambridge Consortium allegedly used ARPANET, the precursor to the internet, to infiltrate and manipulate the stock market transactions on the NASDAQ.
These were all before I was born, dude. I was born after 88.
You're so young. You're younger than me. Wait a second.
I'm kidding, dude. I was born before. I just thought I tried to fake my age here. I don't know, man. I'd have to look it up on Google, and that would be cheating.
Yeah, you gotta get. What's your gut say?
I don't know.
Here we go.
Oh gosh, I'm gonna guess. I'm just purely guessing. I have no basis of saying.
That's right. You get to guess first, and Rajiv has to guess something different, so we have a winner.
Yeah, okay. I'll guess something different.
I'm gonna guess again. The third one is wrong. First two are right. But this one I have no basis of.
I actually was gonna say it was
Come on.
but I'm gonna support this point. I'm gonna say it was the person's name sounds too accurate, so it was number 2.
That's wrong.
Number 2.
Okay, we picked number 2 is wrong. I picked number 3 is wrong. Who wins, bro?
As we say, as Indians, guest is God. The winner is our guest, Sanjay Poonen. Number 3 was the answer. Congratulations.
Damn it.
You guessed that one, dude. I had no idea. I figured like the way 1 and 2 felt believable, the number 3 felt a little bit far.
Yeah.
But that's, hey, Sandeep, I got to listen to this podcast again to copy those three. There's good research on your part. Very well done. I like
Thank you.
Well, thank you so
My
much.
pleasure,
man. Well, how much fun that last 5 minutes was forget listening to my own story. I like the last 5 minutes. The last 5 minutes is the best 5 minutes of the show.
Well, Sanjay, I want to really thank you for spending the time with us today, sharing your life experiences, what got you here, how you see the transformation in the industry. I think there's so much for that budding entrepreneur someday, or even the person that's out there in daily life. But I want to really thank you for being here.
And what I learned from you, Sanjay, before you go, is that I'm going to just remain customer obsessed with maniacal focus and keep things Sesame Street simple. So and say vectors a lot. That I know. So
that's
thanks so
the
much.
vector we want to stay on.
Goodness, you guys are hilarious.
Thank you,
Thanks
Sanjay.
for joining.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that was awesome. First of all, not just because he said that we're the most hilarious podcast ever, but I did like that.
I think we are.
My ego got really stroked there. I'm going to start with my takeaway, which is a couple things. One, apparently you can buy bigger companies than yourself. So I know that you guys in Silicon Valley do this stuff all the time, but I get it now. Like I didn't get it before, but now I get it as like, okay, if you are the first round draft pick rising star, like Webanyama or whatever, like it's going to take a lot to pry him from the organization, right? You're gonna have to sell the farm because they're buying it into the potential, right? Whereas if you're like Al Horford, savvy veteran or whatever, it's like, hey, you know what? He may be quote unquote bigger in a lot of senses, but it's going to be easier for you to get him on your team rather than him getting you to come to his team, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think it's just like that. Like Al Horford, he was not worth as much to other teams, but to the Celtics, he's worth a ton because of the way he plays in that system. And I think this is the game to understand, is that when you're a savvy industry veteran like Sanjay, knowing what pieces to put together with what kind of pitch that meets everyone's needs at the right time. So as he mentioned, like Carlyle needed to, exit their investment from VMware. Cohesity needed to continue its scale and growth and get into various countries around the world and diversify its portfolio. And by putting together the right deal structure, you can enable everyone to win, even though you're taking on a much bigger player. And what he didn't mention is that he's managed much bigger operations before. And so for him, it's a straightforward situation where everybody can win. And so one of the things I really took out of him and his life is that empathy that he has that came from his mom and serving people. You're a doctor, so your level is, you're elevated in society, but you're serving the poorest and most challenged
most
people,
most vulnerable
people who you don't want to touch. She's serving them, and then she's bringing that home.
Lepers of the world,
right. She's bringing that home to her son, and her son Sanjay sees that and says, "This is my example in my life." And then when he becomes a leader, he expresses himself in what he's great at, which is these immense technology businesses. He can then bring that message to so many people.
All right. Hey, before we sign off, I had one more round that I think is kind of cool. Do you want to play it real quick? The tiebreaker round.
All right, let's go play the tiebreaker.
All right. Because I think it's fun. Okay. In 2019, a group of hackers successfully infiltrated the U.S. Department of Defense using an AI-driven drone that mimicked the appearance and signature of a known maintenance vendor's vehicle. That's one. Number two, in 2017, researchers demonstrated a proof of concept attack where they encoded malicious software into a physical strand of DNA. When this DNA was sequenced and processed by a computer vulnerable to the attack, it allowed them to gain remote control of the computer that was processing the DNA. In 2013, hackers used the smart thermostat in a fish tank at a casino to gain access to this network. This unusual entry point allowed them to extract data from the casino's high roller database, demonstrating how seemingly innocuous devices could serve as gateways to more valuable digital resources. All right, so is it the DoD AI-driven drone? Is it the physical strand of DNA? Or is it the fish tank at a casino? All two of these are true. Which one is the fish?
I think it's the single strand of DNA one that doesn't make sense to me. I feel like the drone is doable because the drone may not have the right protocols. I mean, DoD, you'd think they have better security protocols, but maybe in the early days they didn't. And I could see casinos, folks all trying to figure out how to get into them. But the DNA one sounds difficult.
Well, guess what?
I'm wrong.
You're wrong. It was, in fact, the DNA one is true, did happen. This was remember, it was researchers demonstrating a proof of concept attack, and they were able to successfully do it.
I didn't hear that part.
Yeah,
okay, got it.
So that was the tricky part. So the one that was the lie or the fish was...
I guess the lie now.
Okay, yeah,
so
go for it.
You can call me double idiot. Okay, so
I'm happy to. Can't wait.
Okay, I'm gonna go.
Is it the fish tank or is it the AI-driven drone?
I think it's the fish tank.
Is the lie?
Is the lie. Am I wrong again?
It gives me great pleasure to call you a double idiot. It is actually
such a goddamn moron.
It actually is the U.S. Department of Defense one is complete fish.
That sounds so
the
easy
actual
to do.
Fish tank is real. They did hack a smart fish tank.
All right, I guess there would be fewer security protocols on that, so that's probably easier than a DoD thing. DoD probably has a lot more restrictions on it. Okay,
so there you go. I mean, this is like the creativity of hackers, man. This is why you need Cohesity.
All right. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the pod today, please take a moment to rate it and comment. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, and everywhere podcasts can be found.
That's right. This show is produced by myself, Sanjay Parikh, and Anand Shah. Production assistance by Taryn Talley and edited by Sean Marr and Aidan McGarvey.
I'm your host, Rajiv Parikh from Position Squared, a top-notch growth marketing company based in Silicon Valley. Yes, we have AI too. Come visit us at position2.com.
Yes, and I am AI, and this has been an effing funny AI production AI.
We'll catch you the next AI time. And remember, folks, be ever curious with AI.